Welcome everyone to the Chompcast, the official podcast of Sword Chomp and SwordChomp.com. Thank you for downloading or streaming our podcast, taking some time out of your busy life to listen to us. And remember, if you're digging the show, please subscribe, leave us a kind rating, share it with your friends, whatever it takes to get the Chompcast name out there. We have so much fun stuff to talk about today. I am excited, as always. It's Friday. First and foremost, the topic of the show this week is first-person shooters. More importantly, why have we all kind of collectively lost interest in the genre? And even though they're still the most popular genre in the planet. There are some caveats there, but we'll get to that later. We'll also be talking some Wolfenstein 2, some Mario Odyssey, and a little Cuphead as well. Plus, we have a really cool BioBreak article involving an otter. Yes, a prehistoric otter from your nightmares. It's going to be a grand old fucking time, so let's introduce the crew that's here with me today. In honor of Wolfenstein, Josh, I prepared some German-themed intros. So first up, Joshua Fowler is here, of course, from Michigan. And Josh, for our listeners, this is actually, your name has a beautiful ring to it in German. This is what it sounds like.
Joshua.
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 That's interesting. What do you think about that, Josh?
Joshua.
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 It adds a whole different flavor.
That almost sounds French to me. Are you sure that's German, Morgan?
I swear to God. You just go right into Google, you pop it in, Joshua in German, and it's right there, Fish. I promise. See, this is not just a great intro. It's a way to, we're helping people learn about a foreign language here.
Get on Google and type in words.
Joshua Fowler's here.
Yeah. That's fun to do with any word, really. Just type it in Google. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I mean, you go down a dark hole, and I went down some dark holes. Let me tell you that. No full pun intended, I guess. That's probably the wrong analogy, but we're glad you're here, Josh. Thanks for joining us. I looked up my name, of course, which my name has a weird fucking sound to it. Morgan, of course, your host from Montana. This is what Morgan sounds like in German. Morgan. Sounds more powerful, doesn't it? It makes me sound aggressive.
Sure.
Yeah, I like it.
Aggressive.
Morgan. But this I thought was the coolest one. So I looked up Anthony Fisher, our next co-host. Fish is joining us from Texas. This is what your name sounds like, Fish, in German.
Douchebag.
Huh, that's weird. That's...
What?
Wait a second.
Are you sure that's German?
Yeah,
Is that German?
Hold on,
I remember that one from class.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
You can verify? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Okay.
The
It sounds
F
awfully
is,
like douchebag.
The F is it's strange. It's not what you'd expect. Yeah.
Listen, Fish, just really listen, okay?
Douchebag.
Yeah, that's right. That's definitely right.
Okay. All right.
It's beautiful. German is a beautiful language.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, douchebag in German actually sounds like this.
Dummkopf.
Dummkopf. That's a cool one, too. So yeah, I went down this dark hole of just listening to a bunch of words in German this week. But thank you for being here, Fish. I appreciate it, as usual.
Oh, thank you.
And we now know how beautiful your name sounds in German. So
It's lovely.
no one will ever forget it. Our co-host and friend Shay could not make it today. He had some prior obligations, so he is missing another podcast. Shay's missing a lot of podcasts, goddammit. So I mean, I'm just trying to find ways to talk shit on when he's gone. But Fish, as much shit as we give Fish, I don't think he's missed a podcast, have you?
I've missed one.
Oh,
that
you
was
missed
because
one?
I was heading up to Montana for vacation.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
I forgot about that one. And that was beyond your control. You've been pretty reliable, Fish. You know what I mean? You're kind of like an STD. You can't quite get rid of you, flaring up, but you're always there. So
that's a beautiful way of putting it, Morgan. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And Shay will be back hopefully next week, and this gives him time to do God knows what else. Catch up on some games. But fuck, man, we have... Shay likes to trick us into thinking he doesn't like first-person shooters, which is the topic of the show. But we all know secretly he really does. I don't like Call of Duty. And then he crushes it in a weekend. Oh, I don't like Battlefield. And Shay doesn't like the good shooters, like Destiny. That's his problem. He just likes the really bad ones. So it's probably best that he misses our topic of the show, which is first-person shooters, which, I don't know. I guess when I probably threw this topic out there, I can only imagine you guys went, we have to talk about first-person shooters? Is that what you were thinking, Josh? You can be honest.
It depends on the first-person shooter, but yeah. Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Now, the caveat I mentioned at the beginning of the show is that, of course, Josh, your favorite game of last year was Overwatch, which is indeed one of them first-person shooters. And Fish, of course, his favorite game that he just doesn't stop talking about is Destiny 2. And also one of them first-person shooters. So, there are caveats there, but in general, we don't really get that excited about first-person shooters when they release. And I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about why, and maybe things that we would, look forward to in the genre. So, the new Call of Duty dropped, and I got thinking about this today, not only because I've been playing Wolfenstein for the show, but the new Call of Duty dropped, and the World War II Call of Duty, and it has just been selling like crazy. I was looking at some sales numbers. They're saying it's doubled the sales of Infinite Warfare and that's already, and that's crazy. That was launch day sales of Infinite Warfare.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't know. I can see that though. They've started doing so many more incentives to pre-order that I can see launch day sales continuing to go up just because.
Yeah. Well, and you can always go back to that World War II but the interesting thing about that, I thought, was I was reading the article on about the sales, and I think it was on Polygon. I had it up right here, and they were talking about how they were like, Activision was basically saying, Infinite Warfare was a weak seller for us, and I looked it up, and that thing sold 7.6 million copies, and that's just the physical copies, but that's considered weak for them because first-person shooters are now churned out in this like assembly line annual thing that it's just getting crazy. And I think for me that leads to like my first point of discussion with you guys. For me, there's just seems to be a drop in creativity because of that. Now, because they become so popular and everyone's trying to annualize it with the next Battlefield, right, or the next Call of Duty, have been going on 10 fucking years now. Because of that, even though these games are incredibly popular and they're not by any means technically bad games, you don't see a lot of creative risks. They're not breaking a lot of interesting ground artistically. And that, to me, I think becomes more apparent year after year after year, including this World War II game, which I know people love World War II. This isn't to slight them at all. But it's, again, they're basically just sitting around going, well, let's go back to World War II because we haven't done that in a while and it's going to sell. So I think for the first sticking point for me is that. But what about you, Josh?
I mean, there's a lot to that. I mean, I've dabbled in some of the Call of Duties since Modern Warfare, and they're all so similar that it's hard to get excited. It's really hard to get excited. I mean, they're like you said, they're not bad. They don't do anything to interest me anymore. Like, I've played them. If you've not played them before, pick one up. You'll probably really like it. If you've played one before, maybe don't.
Yeah.
So, they kind of share the same like common threads as far as like gameplay mechanics and all and everything, which is upsetting to me. Like, you would think that they would come out with something different, but games like, I think Titanfall kind of breaks that up a bit, but Titanfall just for some reason still isn't as popular as like Call of Duty. Like, people who like Call of Duty just continually go back to Call of Duty year after year, which is strange to me because the core mechanics of those games don't seem to deviate too far from what it originally was.
It was the robots, Fish. They put the robots in Titanfall and the robots in Call of Duty, and they didn't sell as much. Because I don't know what it is about we love that shit, but they generally tend to, people like the more simplified versions of their shooters to a degree. If it is that popular, that is what you'll generally see. But that's a good point, Fish, because Isn't that weird though? Like take Titanfall for example. That was Respawn. That was actually the people that were involved in Modern Warfare. No, I'm sorry, it was Infinity Ward. And Respawn as well. And they went over and they had a chance, and they basically just took a lot of like Titanfall does share a lot of similarities just by example with Modern Warfare. So it feels like they just basically added the robot component to it, which is really cool. You're in mechs or whatever. But even then, they had it, instead of going out and making something really crazy, new, and interesting, they carried a good chunk of that DNA over. And it's just, but I was thinking about like BioShock was still, they're shining examples like BioShocks, right? Where technically that was a shooter and that was a long time ago, but they were trying to really push grounds with the storytelling. And you get little blips here and there that are really interesting along those lines. And like Josh, you're an interesting case study because, like you said, about how you feel about first-person shooters, and then your beloved Blizzard comes along and makes Overwatch, and you end up falling in love with it. Like, that's weird, right? Like, what was it about Overwatch that really stood out to you in a sea of,
A lot of its game, well, it's super team focused. Like that's really the thing, which makes that really changes the way you play the games, and that's much more interesting to me. Having to focus more on the team dynamics than on going out and getting your sick 360 no scope headshots. It's like that's not as much of a thing. It's so much more about the overarching strategy than about individual play. There's still a lot of room for that, but without the team stuff as a foundation, you can't really fake your way through it.
It seems like it carried over a lot of the raid principles that you loved about like WoW in a way, right?
Yeah, a lot. It did that. I mean, another thing that it did that I really enjoyed is that it got away from a lot of the simulation-y type aspects of shooters, where almost no one can aim down scope except for the snipers. Like there's two characters where you can aim down sights. Everyone else, you don't have to do that. There are more or less no physics when you're on the ground. There's no acceleration, anything like that, so it feels really responsive because of that. It feels great. It really does. It feels amazing to play.
Overwatch is kind of one of those examples of Blizzard's taking like a very simple formula and saying, we can jazz this up by, number one, making it more team-based, and then, of course, the characters. Like, we can make our game stand out because everybody's going to fall in love with the character. Cosplay is a huge thing. That was such a smart... And look at Destiny. Like, they stood out because of the raids. Like, people... Literally, the raids were people... even if the shooting, as Fish I'm sure can attest to, it is fantastic in that game, if not the most original thing in the world, those raids were so unique at the time, teaming together and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's... Absolutely. The multiplayer PvE content is something that people have missed. I really do. Because, I mean, that's something that we used to love, just getting together and playing through Halo campaigns.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing, but it scratches that same itch in a way that we've not really gotten from these shooters in a unique way in a long time.
Yeah. Halo kind of tricked us because it came out of nowhere and it changed the game for console shooters at the time. And yeah, like you're saying, it's basically just been more of that. You can get online and play co-op Halo with your friends, I guess, now if you want, but people have been doing that for 10 years. So they're looking for new ways to scratch that itch, like you're saying. And Fish, like, what is it for you? I know you love Destiny with all of your heart, but you don't really seem to have a strong affinity toward, or excitement about a lot of other shooters. And so why is that? Like, if your favorite game in the whole world is a shooter, why do you tend to not feel the same way about the genre?
For Destiny, it would probably be like the world that they've built around it. Like, that story was very interesting to me at